The real watch capital, it's not Switzerland. For decades, the narrative around luxury watches has been clear, and even Rolex may have components sourced directly from Shenzhen. That's right, some of the very same materials that go into your beloved luxury Swiss watch might have passed through Shenzhen factories before. Many of these Chinese factories aren't just crafting cheap knockoffs. They're producing parts that are indistinguishable from the originals, using the same top-tier materials and modern manufacturing. The reality is the luxury watch game is not what it seems. It's less about innovation and more about marketing. The world of luxury watches is often seen as a realm of unparalleled craftsmanship, precision, and exclusivity. Rolex, as one of the most iconic brands, epitomizes this world. But, as with most things that glitter in the high-end market, there's a darker side to the glittering timepieces that adorn wrists worldwide. If you've ever questioned the sky-high prices of Rolex watches, you're not alone. And after watching this, you might start asking even more pointed questions. In recent years, the luxury watch industry has faced growing scrutiny, particularly concerning the role of Chinese manufacturing in creating these so-called Swiss masterpieces. This exposé dives deep into the real story behind Rolex and other luxury brands, shedding light on the often murky waters of the watchmaking world. The real watch capital, it's not Switzerland. For decades, the narrative around luxury watches has been clear. The best watches in the world come from Switzerland. From the meticulously handcrafted movements to the refined aesthetics of the cases, the Swiss have long been regarded as the gold standard of watchmaking. But what if I told you that over 95% of the world's watches are made in China? More specifically, Shenzhen, a city in southern China, holds the unofficial title of the world's true watch capital. Now don't misunderstand, it's not just the knockoff Rolexes or cheap imitations you see flooding the market that are produced in Shenzhen. In fact, many of the watches from iconic Swiss brands like Omega, Tag Heuer, and even Rolex may have components sourced directly from Shenzhen. That's right, some of the very same materials that go into your beloved luxury Swiss watch might have passed through Shenzhen factories before they ended up in a Swiss-made box. But here's where it gets even more shocking. Many of these Chinese factories aren't just crafting cheap knockoffs. They're producing parts that are indistinguishable from the originals, using the same top-tier materials and modern manufacturing techniques, all at a fraction of the cost of what you'd pay for an official Swiss brand name. So when you look at your Rolex Submariner, with its gleaming ceramic bezel and pristine finish, it might just be the case that some of its parts came from China. The only difference? The final assembly, a few marketing tweaks, and the Swiss-made label that lets the brand justify its astronomical price. The Swiss-aid label, the slick loophole. If you're thinking, okay, but what about the Swiss craftsmanship? Isn't the label Swiss-made a guarantee of quality? Well, here's the truth. The term Swiss-made has become a bit of a marketing trick, and it's one of the slickest loopholes in the luxury watch world. Swiss law dictates that a watch only needs to have 60% of its value come from Switzerland to be stamped with the coveted Swiss-made label. That means a significant portion of your Rolex Omega or Patek Philippe could have been sourced, assembled or produced in places like Shenzhen, yet still be legally labelled as Swiss-made. How does that work? Let's break it down. Imagine a factory in Shenzhen creates the watches, dial, bracelet and case, then ships it to Switzerland. There, the movement is inserted, and a few finishing touches are applied. Voila! It's now officially Swiss-made, despite being mostly assembled with Chinese parts. This isn't a secret, industry insiders have known about it for years. But with social media, forums and TikTok exposing the truth, more people are waking up to the fact that they might be paying top dollar for a watch that's more about branding and prestige than actual craftsmanship, the real cost of a Rolex. Now that we've uncovered the origins of these luxury watches, let's talk about their cost. When you buy a Rolex, you're not just paying for the raw materials that go into the watch. No, you're also paying for the brand, its legacy, its marketing, and the aura of exclusivity that Rolex has spent decades cultivating. To put things in perspective, a Rolex Submariner, which can retail for around $10,000, likely costs a fraction of that to make. Industry insiders estimate that the actual cost of production for many luxury watches is less than 25% of the retail price. So, a $10,000 Rolex could have cost the company around $1,200 to $1,500 to produce, and that's before dealer markups and the luxury tax of exclusivity. While some brands like Christopher Ward are more transparent about their pricing structure, usually about 3 times the production cost, Rolex and other major luxury brands mark up their products a staggering 5 times or more. This markup isn't about the raw materials, but rather about the prestige of owning a piece of history. So, when you're shelling out thousands for a Rolex, keep in mind that much of that price tag is not tied to the quality of the watch's inner workings, but to the brand's carefully crafted image. Replica watches, the hidden truth. If you're thinking, I can get a replica Rolex for a fraction of the price, you wouldn't be wrong, but here's the twist. These replicas, or rather homage pieces, are often made in the very same factories that produce the authentic watches. In Shenzhen, luxury watch parts are crafted with the same materials as the ones used for high-end Swiss brands, and sometimes these parts are even sourced from leftover stock used in real Rolex production. These replicas aren't the cheap, poorly made knockoffs that flood flea markets. Some of them are so close to the real thing that it's almost impossible to tell the difference without taking a magnifying glass to the fine details. The only difference is that they aren't officially branded as Rolex, Omega or Patek Philippe. Instead, they're sold as unbranded OEM, Original Equipment Manufacturer pieces. These are watches that were made in the same factories with the same materials, but just lack the brand's final touch. Some Chinese factories are even openly selling customized luxury watches directly to the public. This means you can skip the boutique experience and go straight to the factory for a bespoke piece, at a fraction of the cost. And these aren't just budget-friendly fakes. We're talking about high-quality builds that are practically indistinguishable from the real thing. The emotional appeal of luxury watches. But here's the million-dollar question. Why do people still pay top dollar for these watches, even when they know the truth? Well, luxury watches are about more than just the raw materials and craftsmanship. They're about status. They're about owning a symbol of success, wealth, and exclusivity. And that's what makes luxury watches like Rolex so appealing. The truth is, when you buy a luxury watch, you're not just buying a finely crafted piece of timekeeping technology. You're buying a story. You're buying access to a world that most people can only dream of. You're buying a silent flex, a way to show the world that you've made it. And for some people, that feeling is worth every penny. It's the status that comes with wearing a Rolex, an Omega, or a Patek Philippe that people are really paying for. The brand isn't just a watch, it's a representation of success. When you walk into a room with a Rolex on your wrist, heads turn, you command attention, respect, and admiration. That's something you can't easily put a price on. The watch industry's dirty little secret. Despite the secrecy and the whispered rumours, the luxury watch industry has long operated in this grey area. For years, major Swiss brands have relied on China for components, assembly and manufacturing, but they've carefully guarded the truth behind their Swiss-made labels. The result is that many buyers have been left in the dark, paying exorbitant prices for watches that are partially, or even mostly made in China. The reality is the luxury watch game is not what it seems. It's less about innovation and more about marketing, perception, and prestige. And as more whistleblowers, insiders and social media accounts spill the tea, the illusion of the Swiss watchmaker's perfect craftsmanship is slowly unraveling. Is Rolex really worth it? So when it comes to Rolex and other luxury watches, the question remains, are they worth the price? Technically speaking, the price might be inflated by the brand's marketing, the Swiss aid loophole, and the global supply chain that includes Chinese factories. But emotionally, that depends on you. If you're buying a Rolex for its craftsmanship and technical innovation, you might be disappointed when you realize the extent of Chinese manufacturing behind the scenes. But if you're buying it for the prestige, the status, and the feeling of owning something exclusive, then maybe the price tag isn't so outrageous after all. Ultimately, the power lies with you as the consumer. Once you know the truth, you can decide if the luxury watch industry's high price tag is worth it, or if you'd prefer to go straight to the source for a fraction of the cost. Whether you choose to stick with the Swiss-made legend or tap into Shenzhen's factories for a custom piece, one thing is clear, the game has changed, and now you're in control.